Hey, Jason, great to see you.
Hey, Marla, so happy to be here.
I'm so glad. So you have what I call the longest title in advertising. Can you explain a little bit more about what you do and the area that you lead at VMLY&R?
Yeah, for sure. So I'm an executive director with VMLY&R, and the focus of my work is really bringing human-centered design to the forefront of how we build brands, how we build businesses, and how we build fantastic customer experiences. So it's really a question of how do we make humanity a competitive advantage for business and for the brands that we all love to work on.
That's great. And I assume that creativity is at the heart of that. So let's get into creativity and let's talk about how ad tech is really converging with creativity and also how it's empowering creatives to do more and approach their work in more innovative ways. Tell us the work that you've been doing and what you see
Yeah,
happening.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, ad tech does a lot of really interesting things. I mean, if you think about ad tech through the lens of distribution, right? It's created a world in which we have a way to effectively deliver interactions to smaller and smaller groups of people in more diverse places and spaces, and to interact with them in ways that are increasingly intimate and personal. And that, in my mind, opens up an enormous world of creativity over the past decade or longer, because, as creatives, you're not locked into a large message that is meant to appeal to people broadly. You're actually able to create an entire system of messages that can actually interact with people in a deeper, more interesting and more emotional spectrum. So I think it's really done a lot to advance creative possibilities.
And you talked a bit about human-centered design, and I want to just dig deeper into that and also the role of technology, especially with AI and creativity and advancing or enabling that. How do you see all of these things working together?
Well, that is such a wonderful and interesting question. I mean, human-centered design, also known as design thinking, it has become just increasingly important to brands. Recent work from Forrester says that 99% of companies that are customer obsessed, truly customer obsessed, they utilize human-centered design broadly throughout all roles in their organization. And we've seen over the past couple of decades that technology companies do that really well. And what I see is that blend of empathy and creativity and experimentation becoming increasingly important, which actually democratizes creativity, right? So what we see is that a good idea really doesn't care where it came from. It may come from the client, it may come from an account person, it may come from a project manager. That creativity is something that we all can play in. And I think technology has really done a nice job, but sometimes thorny job, a nice job of making it like entirely new modes of creativity possible, right? The kind of reconstructions that we can do with artificial intelligence, the insights that we can find via machine learning that then inspire something that was completely unimaginable even 5 years ago. Like it's perhaps the most creative time of my career.
So Jason, how do you make sure that that human-centered design is pervasive, not just throughout the agency, but also on the brands that you're working with so that it isn't siloed, that it truly is embraced across the full organization?
It is sometimes a question of stubborn willpower. It is empathy. It is curiosity. It is connecting with people, especially on the client side, for whom this way of working can really be unfamiliar, right? So many times in businesses, they've been trained in certain kind of processes and they get comfortable with that, right? And so much of the work as a facilitator and as a coach is giving people permission and giving people um, inspiration in order to tap into their own creative confidence, and really just creating a permission space that says, you know what, you have ideas too. You get to have ideas. There is a 95% chance that you were born a creative genius, right? So join us. And I have to tell you, for the clients that embrace it, they have so much fun. They are so happier. And frankly, we get much better work and we get there faster.
And I'm assuming you get better business results also.
always better business results,
So can
right?
you
But
share an example that you've worked on recently where you really got not only the internal team, but also the brand that you were working with, the client, to really embrace this and carry it forward?
yeah, I mean, so the Ford Motor Company is, one of our largest clients, and
Mhm.
whether you're looking at, the market making and market moving Mustang Mach-E, or the new Ford F-150 Lightning, right? This is an organization 110 years old, an engineering and manufacturing led business that is in the midst of becoming a human-centered, design-driven organization, and the kind of results that become possible. We're working with the International Markets Group, where the majority of their business is the Ford Ranger. And, unfortunately, some of these Rangers are breaking down sometimes. And our team, working with the client team, went in there and in a matter of weeks, diagnosed that Ford's ability to take care of that customer was weighed down with bureaucracy, with red tape, with not quite being sure who's responsible for what. And in a matter of weeks, this team was able to come together using human-centered design and create what's called the Ranger Support Team. It's a single point of contact where if your Ranger breaks down on the road, you call Ford, they know immediately, and you are taken care of. And this has been not only a magnificent success in raising the customer experience scores for Ford, on every measurable business metric, we've seen positive gains between 38 and 68% on all metrics measured. So, I mean, it's really been a fantastic impact to the business, and it's one I'm really thrilled to say is scaling regionally right now, and I wouldn't be surprised to see it scale globally over time.
That's a great example. You and I have talked for a while about the need to address DE&I and customer experience. And I
Yeah.
think there are so many things that we need to be thinking about in this area, particularly about bias. But how do you go about with human-centered design, really ensuring an equitable outcome for not only the creative work you're doing, especially with AI, but also for all types of people?
Yeah, I mean, it's a great question, and thanks for asking. I mean, diversity and equity and inclusion is it's near and dear to my heart. And I think that one of the real powers of human-centered design is it is fundamentally grounded in empathy, and it is fundamentally grounded in curiosity. And when you combine those two things, and I mean, really practice it, which is not always easy, but when you really practice it, it lets you see the world differently, right? It lets you understand that your experience is biased, and just because it's your experience, that doesn't make it the total experience. Just because it's true for you, it doesn't make it true, right? And when you're able to kind of view the world with that fuller and more open perspective, it gets really easy and obvious to see that there are people who, I mean, they're in unfortunate circumstance and systematic disadvantage, right? Once we're willing to acknowledge that, it's okay, what are we going to do about it, right? And very often, the acknowledgement that the bias is there is the important first step to taking action in order to make a world that is more fair and more inclusive.
Can you share an example of an issue that you've uncovered or some bias that you've uncovered? You don't have to say the name of the brand, but it'd be interesting for people to understand what types of biases you're uncovering and addressing in the kind of work that you're doing.
Well, I mean, honestly, there's not a client where there isn't bias, and it's not necessarily a detriment to them. It's just been the product of the time in which they've grown up. And one of the clients that I think is really, really interesting is we do some work with the Greater Miami Convention and Visitors Bureau, right? Now, what's fascinating about that particular situation is Miami, as it turns out, white people are a minority, and there is incredible pride around sort of the Cuban and Latinx heritage in and around Miami. But that has an unintentional effect in that those cultures, considered minority, and rightly so, have an uncomfortable bias sometimes around trans LGBTQ people, right? And so for a city that does such a fantastic job of celebrating diversity, it turns out that there's a little bit more work to be done, because even in diverse populations, there are in fact biases.
So that's something that they're working on right now.
Absolutely, right? So how do you, as a city, how do you celebrate diversity to the greatest possible extent, right? And not have the limitation be the majority of your minority.
Mm-hmm. Got it. So as you think about the next era of customer experience, how has the expectation around the way brands connect with consumers evolved? And what do you see as next? And then also, where and how can technology support some of these new needs?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, in a very macro sense, if we roll back several decades, for most brands, there was an abundance of demand and a scarcity of supply, right? And so it was great. I could sell more and more cars. I could sell more and more soda. I could expand my business based on, a great product, a great price, and fantastic advertising. And what has happened, especially in, developed economies, is we actually have an abundance of supply chasing a scarcity of demand. And that's why experience becomes like the winning edge for companies that do a fantastic job. And this, in my way of thinking, what's next is companies understanding that empathy and humanity is actually a competitive differentiator and a competitive advantage. It's not only does the product do the job, it's if I invite you into my life, is the net impact um, that you make better and special and different by choosing you to be in my life rather than choosing your competitor, right? So it's that intangible experience that makes a difference. And I think that we're at the dawn of a complete redesign of how we think about what it means to be in a relationship with a customer, right? I don't think that it's so much customer relationship management. I think that we're moving into a world of a partnership relationship with customers.
And how do you see that partnership evolving? And also, how does technology play a role in that?
Technology is going to be essential, because so many of the interactions that customers are going to reward companies for providing will be delivered by real-time, on-demand technical services, probably based in machine learning and AI. What we see right now is that the companies that are doing a really good job of delivering great customer experiences have permission to develop first-party relationships with their customers. And so long as I trust you and you do a responsible job of what you do with my data, that data is going to give you the ability to understand how to serve my needs, how to match my desires, how to make suggestions that are helpful and not just helpful and not just persuasive, right? It's the machine learning of technology, and then the technology is going to provide the delivery systems that will allow you to have a minute by minute, hour by hour, day by day persistent presence in my life, right? Whether you're selling me tennis shoes, automobiles, or personal electronics, you get to be a persistent presence in my life. And it's really technology that makes that possible.
So, Jason, was there a brand or a client that you worked on where you have a good example that you could share?
Yeah, absolutely. So, Ford is one of our largest clients, and we've done some really interesting work with the international markets group there. Now, what the data was showing was that the customer experience around customer support for the Ranger team was suffering. And we worked with a blended team, agency people and client people, using human-centered design over a series of weeks. And what we discovered was that the ability for Ford to deliver the experience that their customers really deserved was being impeded by bureaucracy, red tape, process complexity, unclear ownership. And this team, in a matter of weeks, was able to completely redesign the experience. The Ranger support team that provides an effortless single point of contact for any Ranger customer that needs service. Now, I have to say that the early returns have been really encouraging. The customer experience scores have gone dramatically up, but Perhaps even more interestingly, the time to serve that customer has been cut in more than half. And on every business metric measured, we've seen positive increases ranging from 38 to 68%. So it's such a fantastic example of human-centered design. Help the Ford Motor Company do something that's not just fantastic for the customer, but really, really impactful for the business.
That's great.